shut up and listen. Whatever you're doing right now, stop. This is more important. Hey, I'm DJ.
And I'm Gage.
Welcome to our show, Everything But the Cats. We are the only show that is going to talk about everything. And I mean everything. Your doctor's haircut? Sure. You once smelled your armpit a little too long? Hey, we'll talk about it. Anything else we're going to talk about, Gage?
We're going to talk about that time you got reincarnated as a slime, for sure. Eventually.
Oh,
maybe.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that time you tried facial hair and it didn't really work out, and you kept trying to insert it into conversations to, like, kind of get people's real feelings about it, but you could tell it kind of made them feel awkward when you did that, so you really took the hint and just kept shaving it. We'll talk about it all, but there's one thing we will not talk about, and what is that, Gage?
We will not talk about the cats.
That's because we're everything but the cats.
Mm.
Yeah, so today is probably the best intro I've ever done. But Gage, what are we going to be talking about today? What are we going to be doing today?
Today, I'm going to go ahead and call this based on a true story. One of the many tropes about certain kinds of movies is that at the beginning they'll say, based on a true story. And so I've taken 3 movies that are critically acclaimed or culturally loved, and we're going to talk about the true stories behind those movies. And I don't know, it's just something that's always been interesting to me when I see that on a screen, and that's something we're gonna dive into. We're gonna give.
Can I guess the first one? Sorry.
Yeah, guess the first movie.
Transformers.
Oh, you were so close.
Bird Box.
Even closer. I think I haven't seen it. So the 3 movies that we're going to be talking about today are each a different genre. So we've got one movie that's kind of I guess you could call it like kind of a drama, kind of. One movie that is a horror film, and one movie that is a comedy. We're going to start with the drama because it's probably one of the most well-known movies based on a true story. And DJ, I'll go ahead and give you a hint about the movie, and I want you to tell me what you think it is. It's got Leonardo DiCaprio in it.
So we've got options.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you 3 options.
Okay.
And I'll feel good no matter what. Obviously, there's Titanic. And then there's The Aviator. And then, whatever the movie is where he's a pretend businessman or whatever.
Pretend
like
businessman?
He's pretending to be his character is like a scam artist that like pretends he like is an airline captain.
Okay. That's the one we're talking about. That's called Catch Me If You Can. It's from 2002. And it's got Leonardo DiCaprio playing Frank Abagnale Jr., who is regarded as one of the greatest American con men. Now, have you seen that movie?
No, but I've seen the trailer on Paramount Plus a number of times.
Okay. I actually really like the movie Catch Me If You Can. It's got I think a pretty engaging story. It's got Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks in it, so it's got good actors. And it's overall, I think, just a really fun time. Now, the plot of the movie is... Now, you kind of already hinted at parts of it. He's a fake businessman. He pretends to be an airline pilot. Do you know anything else about the plot? Or have you ever heard the name Frank Abagnale Jr. before?
He's the guy that did 9/11, right?
Oh, gosh.
Like, it wasn't a terrorist... We can cut this joke. It wasn't a terrorist act. It was like... He was just... He should not have been behind the controls. He didn't know what he was doing. We're not aiming for the truck.
I will say that's one of my favorite memes to come out of Toy Story.
And 9/11.
Yeah. I was talking to my parents the other night, and I was like, you know what? I make a lot of jokes about 9/11 because I was 5 when it happened.
It's easier that way, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I was like, you guys were like, adults. How did you
What's
feel?
your excuse?
Like, No, I was like, how did you feel about it?
Yeah.
And they were like, well, I don't know. I didn't think it was real, I guess. It's like, okay. Like, not that they thought it was like a conspiracy or anything, but they were like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. Um,
Yeah. That makes
and
sense.
like there was some fear associated with it. It was right after my sister was born. I think it was 2 weeks after my sister was born.
Probably
To
related.
like to the day, and my grandma was staying with us, and my mom walked out of her room or something, and she just saw grandma holding Brittany and like with another hand covering her mouth as she was watching the news. Um,
I I'm reading a book called The Paradise King. I don't know if you've heard of it.
mm-mm.
It's by the son of John Eldridge, Blaine Eldridge.
Okay.
Um, and essentially the goal is to like tell the story of the Bible, but like in a way that kind of captures some of the things that we lose because of like just being so separated from it time wise. So like not like making the Bible a thrilling story, but like trying to recapture some of the elements that make the Bible a thrilling story.
Yeah.
So it's good. I started it, but realized it'd be better if Angela and I are working on it together. But anyways, and when the fall happens, he talks about how like just a lot of times when we like lose someone, it's like the old reality is gone and it's been replaced with a new reality, and like the new reality is almost identical but it's different, and you got to like learn to live in the new reality, and how like there's similarity to the fall. I cried about it. It was a very well written paragraph.
Yeah.
um but I feel like 9/11 was probably that for a lot of people as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was, COVID was our 9/11. Way deadlier, I will say.
Farther reaching by a long shot. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. I might have to look into that.
Yeah, good book.
Yeah, so this movie did come out in 2002, so anything's possible.
Mm.
Anyways, Leonardo DiCaprio plays the main character, Frank Abagnale Jr., and this is a movie where we see the true story of one of America's greatest con men. In the movie, Frank Jr. impersonates a teacher, a pilot, an FBI agent or CIA agent, some kind of federal agent, a doctor, and a lawyer, wherein he also passed the bar without going to law school. He traveled throughout many American states and other countries in the process, all while making and cashing fraudulent checks worth millions of dollars. All of this is happening between the ages of 16 and 21 before he's ultimately caught by the FBI after he is put in prison in Marseille, France. And then at the end of the movie, he's brought back stateside, sent to prison, and ultimately hired by the FBI as a consultant in fraud cases. So, spoiler alerts, I apologize for that. It's still worth watching. It's based on a true story.
I
Uh,
was gonna say, like anything where you can go to Wikipedia and like before the movie ever comes out, it's your fault. Like for getting spoiled or for caring.
well, it's just like it's like I say, it's based on a true story. But
Yeah.
that's the general, like, just a brief version of the plot of the movie. So in a span of like 5 years, he does a whole bunch of really interesting stuff. He is able to do like pose as a doctor, perform surgeries, go to law school, not go to law school, pass the bar exam, and become a lawyer, and do all this other stuff, all with like no real training, just because he's like he's smart and gifted as a con man, basically.
What do his parents do?
So his dad was like a member of the Rotary Club or something, and his mom was from France. That's why he ended up in France. And I think she was like a homemaker. His dad used to make a lot of money, was a businessman of some kind, salesman or something, but had like tax issues with the IRS, and then they lost everything. In the movie, his mom ends up cheating on his dad, and they get divorced, and he goes to live with his dad. And then just kind of up and disappears.
Oh,
Yeah. So his dad in the movie is played by Christopher Walken, and
Love that.
yeah, is kind of a con man too in his own right, but like not as much. But he definitely is in the beginning a little bit of a con man, and so it's kind of implied that he picked it up naturally in the film. So that's the story of the movie. Again, it's really good. I recommend watching it if you have not seen it. It's a fun movie with a larger than life story, and as you're about to find out, it may or may not actually be larger than life. So this is the true story. You'll see why I'm using air quotes later. The true story is from Abagnale himself in an autobiography and in many speeches that he's given across the world since this all took place. So, in his own words, he claims that the movie is about 80% accurate to how his real story happened. According to himself, throughout the mid 60s to the early 70s, Abagnale impersonated a Pan Am pilot flying over 3 million miles and traveling to 82 different countries for free. He claimed to have posed as a doctor in Marietta, Georgia, a sociology professor at Brigham Young University, and a lawyer at the Attorney General's office in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He claims that at one point he even stole money from a bank drop off while dressed as a security guard. He also claims that during this period of his life he cashed about 17,000 fraudulent checks equaling $2.5 million, all while the FBI was hot on his trail.
So much easier to be a criminal back then.
Yeah, all you had to do
Glory
was
days.
not be at the crime scene. If anyone asks, tell him it was Golden Joe and the Suggins gang.
They had it made. How do you know that you're in the good old days before you leave them?
Uh,
Whatever that quote is.
yeah, you know you're in the good old days before you leave them because you get away with the crimes. But yeah, so this is his story of what he did between the mid to late 60s and the early 70s. Uh, he claims that he was arrested and put in prison, and then the FBI sprung him out of prison so that he could become a consultant for them. In 1976, so this, yeah, the like he would have been let out of prison in 74, 75, something like that. And in 1976, he founded his consulting firm, Abagnale and Associates, and since then he has worked in tandem with the FBI, with banks, and with other organizations and corporations to help detect fraud and to help with cybersecurity. So that's
Nice.
what he's been doing for the past 50 years. He's also traveled the world over, giving lectures on those subjects, telling his story, his motivational story of going from a con man to a good guy, and still does that to this day. So, this is the story in his words, basically. What are your thoughts
What's
on
the
his
story?
story?
I mean, you said that he has consulted with the FBI.
Yes.
Um, so that does lend credibility to his story that he was like boosted to consult with the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
So otherwise, I'd be like, man, what a good grift to claim that you're some like big time grifter.
So, allegedly,
Let's go.
allegedly, that statement you just made is a lot more accurate than you might think it is. Uh,
I think that every good sentence should begin with allegedly.
the alleged true story is a lot less impressive. So since 1978, so a couple years after he was released from prison, and literally just 2 years into him having his consulting firm, since 1978, people have been calling into question some of the aspects of his story. But they never really took hold just because it would be like local newspapers or local news outlets. And mass media, in-home internet, that kind of stuff wasn't really a thing at the time. And
Mhm.
or at least not to the degree that it is today. And this wasn't a story that really garnered, if someone's just asking about the validity of it, it's not
Yeah.
really something that's going to garner a lot of national traction because it's not exciting to call into question an exciting story. Well, he was giving his speeches, he was giving one of his lectures, and there was a man in 1981 named Jim Keith, who happened to be a manager, I believe, of a J.C. Penney at the time, who heard one of his lectures, and he felt like he and everybody else at this lecture hall had been fed a lie, but he didn't really know how to prove it. And so he kind of set out with all of his spare time and a local detective who also was at that same lecture uh, to research into the true story of Frank Abagnale Jr.
Man,
To see if his stories of fraud were themselves a fraud.
man, he would have gotten away with it if he hadn't, if there hadn't just happened to be this one, autistic man in the audience
Oh my
who was
gosh.
gonna hyperfixate.
Okay, so the thing is, Mr. Keith's daughter even like described him as being like a dog looking for his bone. So, well, Uh,
Yeah.
so he started doing all of this research, and eventually he would team up with a professor of criminal justice named William Toney, who would enlist his students in criminal justice like classes to help them determine the validity or fraudulent nature, fraudulence, fraudulent nature of Abagnale's claims,
Flatulence.
the flatulence of his claims.
That's a big toot.
Yep. So over time, they ended up compiling an 87-page file of news articles, official documents, court documents, and letters surrounding the story of Frank Abagnale Jr., and they deduced that some of his story was true.
Mhm.
He did forge checks. He did masquerade as a pilot at one point. He did escape a jailhouse and he did go to prison in Europe. But what they found, allegedly,
Allegedly.
there are people out there who are a bit sue happy. We're big enough for that, I guess. But uh,
Yeah. Hey, Frank.
yeah,
Up yours?
wouldn't go that far. Uh, no, so they deduced allegedly that the rest of his stories were either at best misleading and at worst just complete falsifications. In reality, because he ended up being in and out of jail so much between the ages of 16 and 21, he was only a free man technically for 14 months of those 5 years.
Man.
And so that would mean that if he really did cash all of the checks that he said he did, he would be cashing like over 100 a day, basically, or like 40 checks a day, 40 fraudulent checks a day. I think it might have been 40, but just a crazy amount of fraudulent checks a day for every day that
Yeah.
he was a free man. Um, they also he couldn't have done a lot of the things he claimed to have done because he was in jail most of that time. They followed up with a lot of the places he claimed to have worked, and they found that even his aliases were not listed as previous employees. And when they went to the FBI to ask if they were the ones who sprung him out of prison, the FBI gave no comment. And still to this day refuses to really give any official comment on it. And so he also they found that like in his stories, in his lectures, he claims that he only ever really targeted big corporations with a lot of his fraudulent endeavors, with a lot of his checks and like the things that he would steal. He claims that he only ever attacked big businesses, but they found the specific stories of a handful of individuals who weren't affluent, who he would rob blind. Um,
Hey, Frank. Up. Yours.
and so it appears that this man, who is famous for being a con man, has really been in for the long con of being a con man.
Local news. Big news. Breaking news.
Uh,
Man who claims to be grifter is grifter.
yeah. Uh, so here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Technically, he's been able to work as a fraud and cybersecurity consultant for 50 years now. So it's worked.
I respect the hustle
Like,
for sure.
yeah, kind of same. Like,
Yeah.
that's a lot to keep up. He even, like, back in 2022, I believe, was hired by AARP to be their official representative in terms of fraud and cybersecurity. And since then, they've parted ways. So that's one of the things that's like within 2 years they have parted ways because of personal differences. They never actually claimed why. Um, Google will now, in front of his lectures, they'll put a disclaimer before them saying there are many statements to be made that we cannot determine the validity of. And a lot of people are starting to see through it on a more official scale. But like when I was in high school, we watched this movie in, I think it was personal law. It was either personal law or personal finance. We watched this movie and our teacher was like, yeah, he like did all this stuff and now works for the FBI, which is what the true story had been for 50 years. If you want more information on it, I don't want to go into all the minutiae and details, but if you do want more information on it, Things I Learned Last Night just released an episode by the time this releases, about a month ago. Maybe much longer. I actually don't know. I'm finally getting caught up on their stuff. It could have been almost a year ago, for all I know. But they released an episode on it that's really good. And Abby Ellen has an article in the New York Post from 2023 detailing how the con man lied about his lies. So,
Dude,
yeah.
I'm ready to fight Leonardo DiCaprio.
Same, actually. I think here's the thing. I think that the problem is he just doesn't want to end up dating anybody who experienced 9/11.
Mm.
I think that's really what it is. Because he played someone who did it.
Mm. I was going to ask, did Frank Abagnale date people older than 25?
Yeah, that's a good question. Uh, he did in the movie end up like marrying someone that worked at the hospital and thought he was a doctor, but he wasn't. And then the night of their wedding, he ended up running off. In real life, he ended up dating a girl for a little bit that he met at on an airplane at an airport, and ended up stealing a lot of money from her family when they let him stay with them while he was on furlough. Allegedly,
Wait, you're staying with me this weekend.
yes.
Suspicious.
Yeah, I'm Frank Abagnale Jr. Jr. Uh,
Ah, I knew it.
but yeah, so that's our first movie based on a true story. Is Catch Me If You Can, and the true story and the truer story. Any final words or thoughts on our first film?
Hey, Frank. Good job, man. You did it. You made it. Honestly, yeah, I've never kept up a lie for 50 years. It sounds really hard to do.
That does sound really hard
Easier
to do.
back then, but
Not even
yeah.
a lie, like a lot of lies. He built his
Hmm.
whole career on it. Uh, he found out that being a con man was too hard, so he was a con man,
A con man.
a con man. It's like that dance. Okay, our second movie. This is a horror film that is based on a true story.
I'll
Uh,
guess.
I real quick, I'm gonna give you a hint.
Okay.
The first one came out in the 80s. Wait, yes, in the 80s. What is your guess?
Nightmare on Elm Street. Excuse me.
Okay. Have you heard this one before?
No.
Okay. It is Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, the part of the story that is true, or that is based on a true story, may surprise you. Now, there is a big plot point. I will say spoiler alert, but also this does involve the plot involves a man disposing of children. So if that's something that you
So if
don't,
you like having children around, maybe don't listen to this one.
yes, I'm not going to go too in detail. But Nightmare on Elm Street, basic plot is that a group of teenagers in the Midwest are terrorized in their sleep by a man with burn scars, wearing a fedora, with a striped sweater, brandishing a glove with bladed fingers. But this isn't the beloved and very darkly weird Edward Scissorhands. This is Freddy Krueger. As the teenagers, so a lot what as the teenagers continue to have these nightmares, where some of them end up being killed by Freddy in their dreams, uh, they don't wake up. They die in real life. And so there's one of these teenagers, her name is Nancy Thompson, decides to figure out the secret behind this terror that they're all facing. And it's real cagey in the story. I've never watched it all the way through, but it is really cagey. Like the families act like there's something weird when they start hearing details about it, and so she's able to get some people to finally admit that what had happened is years before, like when all of them were in like grade school or even before then, like kindergarten, maybe even before then. Freddy Krueger was a man who was a child disposer. Uh, that sounds so dumb. Uh,
The dumbest thing you've ever said.
Not even remotely. Uh, but he was, and he was on trial, and he ended up getting off on a technicality, and so the families in the community took it upon themselves to take care of him, and they
Like
burned him.
shelter him, rehabilitate him.
Uh, the other kind of take care of.
Keep him warm at night.
Very warm, too warm for survival,
Mm.
one might add. And so now in the movie, he is a vengeful spirit looking to get revenge on the families by disposing of their children and their loved ones. Uh, and so there's a bunch of Nightmare on Elm Street movies. There's some of it's one of the classic horror series that's out there. You've got Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They're some of the giants in the genre of horror, specifically the slasher subgenre. And this is one of the biggest. It's one of the greats. And you've got Robert Englund, who famously plays Freddy Krueger. And anytime you see him in almost anything else, they have to reference the character. And he is an iconic character, and most of the people who watch the movies watch them for him. So that's the basic story. It's a lot of movies follow this that kind of veer off of the original plot because
Hmm.
eventually the kids are not all right, you know. But
Real
this,
quick.
yes,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I just want to get you. You talked about like in the movie, if you die in the dream, you die in real life.
Mm-hmm.
I had a dream the other night where I just like I've never done this in real life for context. But I like inhaled the good air from a spray can. And then it was like right as I woke up, and I woke up incredibly sleepy. Like so I'm just there in bed like, did I just get high? If you get high in the dream, you get high in real life. Uh, and then I went back to sleep like immediately.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of like Freddy Kusher or something. Got ya?
That's not bad. Ready, whip.
Yeah, that's good. Um, oh, that kind of spray can. Okay.
Yeah.
But Nightmare on Elm Street, created by Wes Craven, who also created a lot of other horror stuff. He made like the original The Hills Have Eyes. He did, gosh, what is it? Last House on the Left. And he's done a lot of other really, really famous and good horror films. And so Wes Craven, very big career in this world, and Nightmare on Elm Street is among the great things that he added to the world of horror. Just sounded
World.
like Crew, and I look like him too. Uh,
Mm.
but yeah, so Wes Craven claims in an oral history of the Nightmare on Elm Street that he was inspired by a news article that he read in 1985, I believe. Might have been 1984. I didn't get the exact year that the article came out, I think. This is saying 1987, but I'm pretty sure the first Friday the 13th came out. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street came out before then. But the true story behind Nightmare on Elm Street is that starting in April of 1983, there were a lot of like South Asian refugees who came over to the United States, and there was a rash among them of just unexplained deaths, all of them happening in the same way to roughly the same people. They would cry out in their sleep in fear, and then they would pass. Medical authorities at the time referred to this as, this is so dumb, but they referred to it as Asian death syndrome. That's what they called it. Uh,
Man.
the Philippines, the Japanese, and the Thai all had different names for what was going on, but they all roughly translated to the same thing, which was nightmare death. Um,
Yeah.
and in less than 4 years, 130 or more, but it's at least 130 of these refugees all passed away in the same way.
Yeah.
Of the reported deaths, all of them were men. The average age was 33, and standard autopsies revealed nothing other than a sudden heart stoppage in their sleep.
So what do you think the government was testing?
Oh, gosh. I didn't even think about that. Who
Yeah.
knows? Who knows? Maybe that's around the time they were doing MK Ultra.
Mm.
Uh, but yeah, so they did this, and they did more detailed autopsies on I think 14 to 18 of the men, and they found that the hearts literally short circuited. Like either they were shocked by something physically, like electricity, or they had some kind of very, very extreme burden of stress on the heart that caused it to like short circuit, and it caused a lot of the fibers in the heart to fray in a way that is not common even among those who have stress related deaths.
Yikes.
And so there was never an official cause found, as far as I know. Uh, they just stopped happening.
Sweet.
And
Glad for that.
yeah, glad it stopped. But they just the scientists at the time, the medical experts at the time, ended up just chalking it up to being um, the stress of being forced out of their homelands and being forced to live in a new place. And there is an article in the LA Times from 1987, if you would like to check that out for more details of the day. Uh,
Add that link.
yeah, I'll probably add the links to all the articles I reference. Um, But yeah, so that's the true story behind Nightmare on Elm Street is there was a weird rash occurrence of people of roughly the same demographic uh, dying in their sleep unexpectedly with no known cause.
All right, now let's hear the true story.
See, sadly, I don't have true stories for this one or our final movie. But that's the true story. That's what inspired one of the most beloved horror franchises that's out there. Strangely enough, was something actually rather horrifying.
Yeah, I was curious.
It is. The first time I heard about it, I'm trying to remember. I think it was in either a lore episode, which is a podcast by Aaron Mahnke, really good podcast. Or it was in a Mr. Ballin episode. Again, really good YouTuber, really great videos. But I'm pretty sure both of them made an episode on it or touched on it in an episode. But it's crazy that happened at all.
Yeah.
So our final well, any other words, comments, questions about this story?
No, I mean, yeah, it's just curious. Like, I wonder what thing they all had in common, or is it just that 130 of them happened? But also, like, I bet in the U.S. each year, or each how many, like 4 years? I bet in the U.S. each 4 years, every 4 years, that like 130 white people, like white men in their 30s, just die, or like black men in their 30s just die.
And that's something that they did look into at the time. But
Yeah,
that's the thing they found that was weird was the heart's fibers had frayed, unlike
that's it.
when similar deaths occurred in other races. So it could be something to do, and like the South Asian diet at the time didn't consist of a lot of fatty foods or really anything that would cause heart issues. Um, the traditional diet, at least. So after a few years of living in the United States, maybe it was the change in diet that could have done something. Maybe it had something to do with the change in environment in another way. Um,
Hmm.
it's really hard to come to a conclusive answer. Um,
Yeah,
but it is curious at the very least. Uh, I get what you're saying though. Like over a 4 year period, a lot of weird stuff happens, and it could be like one of those like almost mass hysteria type things where like the
hmm.
dancing plague of whenever that was in France.
2012 is the Harlem
The
Shake.
Harlem Shake. You know the dancing plague, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. That might be a fun episode to do eventually, or a fun segment on an episode to do eventually. But yeah, so our final movie that we're going to cover is a comedy, and I think it's one that neither of us really liked growing up. I think. I
I'm
think.
gonna guess
What do you think it is?
Shallow Hal.
No, but it shares a main actor.
Ah, Shrek.
Uh, Close. Is Jack Black in Shrek?
Uh, you know what? No, no. I was thinking Michael Myers, who plays Shrek.
Mike Myers. Michael Myers is the Halloween guy.
Ah, you're right. I was like, I'm threading a needle here. I got to get it right, and I did not.
No, Jack Black is the main character in this movie. It's a comedy that came out, I believe, in 2006. Yes,
Ooh, Jack
2006.
Black. School of Rock. Let's go.
You're very close, but wrong.
Gulliver's Travels. Let's go.
It's before that. It's before that. It was
Yeah.
a lot of. Okay, I remember we were in a white elephant gift exchange in small groups. I believe it was in eighth grade, maybe freshman year, and somebody brought this movie to the white elephant gift exchange. I
Yes.
believe Marcus
Kung
did.
Fu Panda.
Oh my gosh, you're so close, but so wrong.
Let me just keep sitting on this.
Think Mexico.
Yeah. Kung Fu Panda 2. Of course, you're talking about Nacho Libre.
Yes, Nacho Libre is based on a true story.
Nice.
So in the movie Nacho Libre, have you seen Nacho Libre?
Um, I like most of it, bits and pieces.
Same. It was never my favorite growing up.
Overrated for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look back on it more fondly than it deserves.
Yeah,
But I also haven't watched it all the way through ever, and I certainly haven't watched it in years.
yeah.
Maybe I would enjoy it more now than I did back then. Who knows? But the basic plot of Nacho Libre is that Jack Black plays a friar or a monk type guy who is a cook at a Mexican monastery where he grew up because both of his parents were missionaries and they died when he was a little kid. And so he lived at this monastery, at this orphanage, and ended up growing up to be the cook there. His name is Ignacio, or Nacho, which is the nickname for people named Ignacio, which is great
Mhm.
because when I was in Spanish class in high school, I chose Ignacio just because I thought it sounded cool, and then I found out Nacho was the nickname for it after the fact, and that's what I had everybody call me.
That's great.
Um, so the monastery that he works at as a cook is home to a host of orphans, and he cares very deeply for them. But there isn't enough money in the monastery to properly feed them. So, in an effort to raise money for the monastery, Nacho decides that he's going to moonlight as a lucha libre wrestler, uh, which is a Mexican masked wrestler. Have you ever watched actual like lucha libre before?
No.
It's fun. I feel like there's so much showmanship, and like if it weren't for lucha libre, the WWE would not exist. I don't think. Maybe timeline wise, I don't know if that works out,
Who
but like
knows?
I watched it in Chicago when it was a Mole de Mayo, which was a festival, a big street festival in one of the neighborhoods there, where everybody was selling mole,
Great.
and it was like right after I got to Chicago, and there's just this wrestling ring set up in the middle of the street. There are these
Hmm.
guys wrestling on it, and I was like, okay,
Great.
this is.
Damn, man, I love cities. I said damn on accident. I just said I meant to say man. I love cities though.
Cities are they're so cool and so much
Yeah.
wild stuff happens in them. But yeah, so that happens. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's a lot of fun to be a part of. Um, and but yeah, so he decides he's going to moonlight as a lucha libre wrestler, but the church forbids wrestling, and so he has to disguise himself. So he goes by the
It's like
name Nacho.
like a really specific rule. Like I feel like most churches like I think that if all of a sudden I got into like professional wrestling, my work wouldn't be the most pleased about it. But they don't have rules about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like when Kevin Bacon, who just really loves dancing, happens to wind up in the one town where you're not allowed to dance.
Yeah.
And so he dances about it. And everyone
Yeah.
turns around, apparently. You know? It's basically Nacho Libre is a modern retelling of Footloose. Uh,
Mm. I would have watched Footloose if it were about Mexican wrestling.
well, let
I
me
say
tell
that. I
you.
haven't watched Nacho Libre, so.
um, but yeah, so he the nature of lucha libre, you wear a mask anyways, so it's great. He's disguised. He
Yeah.
gets to do this wrestling, and this is a classic underdog story with a lot of heart and some, I'm gonna say, awkward laughs along the way, um,
I'll say
because
every laugh in the movie is awkward.
it really is. Well, and like it's a Jack Black movie from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
It's just going to have awkward moments in it. I can't speak for how great the movie is, but it is a movie with a lot of heart. It reminds me of like Napoleon Dynamite a little bit, in
Oh,
that
yeah.
like it's that era of just trying to make your movie awkward.
Yeah.
And
Also overrated, I would say.
it is overrated. I will say, if you are to the point of tired that you're slap happy, it can be pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good. Just overrated.
Yeah. I saw somebody, there was a post one time where someone said that each character in Napoleon Dynamite is dealing with a different effect of loneliness. And they were like, and that makes the movie so much more deep. And I'm like, is that really what the intention was, or is that just like English teacher
Yeah.
like post analyzing something?
What did the author really mean?
By the curtains were blue.
Do you talk to your mother with that mouth?
Yeah, right. But that's the story of the movie. The only things I really remember about it growing up, we watched it at after school care a handful of times.
Nice.
There is a scene where he gets like banished and has to wander in the wilderness for like a day. Um, and he sings a song about it afterward. And one of the lines is, I ate some bugs, I ate some grass, I used my hands to wipe my tears. And I remember that, and I remember he eats an eagle's egg raw. Uh,
Love that.
and it's just, that's all I really remember from the movie. That, and it's the first place I ever saw street corn, and I had no idea what it was. Um, really good, though. Oh my goodness, I love it. But yeah, so the true story behind Nacho Libre, and this is my favorite of our true stories, is about a man named Sergio Gutierrez Benitez.
Mm.
He was born on May 9th of 1945 as the 16th of 17 children.
Shoot.
When he was a teenager, he loved movies that were actually about lucha libre. And there was, and this is the craziest part. There were these two movies that were about a priest who supported his orphanage
No way.
by fighting as a lucha libre wrestler at night.
Wild.
So in the 70s, he was watching, not 70s, in like the 60s, he was watching these movies about an actual, like, the movies were about a priest who moonlit as a lucha libre wrestler. Now, by the time he was 22, he had kind of gone not off the rails necessarily, but he was a drug addict. He was an alcoholic by the time he was in his early 20s, and then ended up deciding to give his life to give his life to Jesus and turn things around, and really just committed himself to the ministry of the priesthood. His theological training as he was doing this ended up taking him to Rome, and then took him to Spain, and then back to Mexico, where he would actually teach philosophy and history at a lot of Roman Catholic universities, which is just super cool. Super cool story. Um, and then he became a secular priest, which I think my understanding of what that means is that he's like still a priest in the Catholic Church, but he's not like overage, like a priest at a church, I think is what it
Gotcha.
means. Um,
Gotcha.
so he becomes a secular priest and opens an orphanage that throughout its existence, which it still exists and he still works there today, has been able to serve as the home of 270 children.
Great.
But he's been doing this for a very long time. In 1973, so 1973, he starts wrestling as Fray Tormenta, which means Friar Storm,
Love it.
which is awesome and is actually low key based on the name of the priest from the movies that he watched when he was younger.
That's
Um,
great.
because it wasn't I think it was like Senor Tormenta is what his name was, so Mr. Storm or something like that.
Hmm.
But he goes by Fray Tormenta, Friar Storm. And so he started wrestling in 1973, which is just crazy. And he would continue to wrestle as a lucha libre wrestler until 2012.
Yikes. 39 years.
Oh my word. 6 years after Nacho Libre came out.
What are his connections to 9/11?
Oh my gosh. Here's the crazy part. Uh, as far as I know, nothing. Um,
Oh, good.
so, with a nearly 40-year wrestling career, which is insane, uh, and also, like, that's just what he's moonlighting as. During the day, he's a priest over an orphanage
Huh.
for all this time, and still is a priest over this orphanage. Um, in 1991, there was a French film that came out loosely based on his life. And in 2006, Nacho Libre came out, and he was in Nacho Libre.
How fun.
In the movie, he plays a retired wrestler.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and then in 2007, he would appear in another film. And right now, he is actively there's a character based on him in a Mexican comic book series that's about another wrestler. Um,
Love it.
and so he still works, like I said, he still works at the orphanage as a priest. And one of his children from the orphanage, whose um, identity is still under wraps because of the way that Lucha Libre works, has even taken up the mantle of Fray Tormenta Jr.
That's fun.
It is fun. Like I said, that's
Yeah.
my favorite of the true stories from these movies.
Better than the Asian death syndrome.
Yeah. I don't know,
I
man. It's hard to beat death syndromes.
I was at the mall yesterday for a business meeting and heard a dad explaining racism to his daughters. And I thought he did an excellent job. I would have done it not in the mall. Uh, but that's all right. Thought he did an excellent job. And so he's like, yeah, so racism, like I'm pretty sure one of them starts a conversation like, what's racism? It's like racism would be like if you thought that you were better than other people, like just because your skin is white, or like it's when people think that their color makes them better than other people, and it's like it's wrong and it's bad and like it's not a good thing to believe. So like, great job, very very brief explanation, a good 6-year-old explanation of it. Racism is the systems that oppress. But like if it's at an individual level, it's not technically racism, it's like prejudice. That's a joke. He didn't get into all those things. Um, but I thought I did a good job. And then I don't know where the context of this conversation is. But then his daughter says like, "So what's the N word?"
Oh my god.
And that's the point where I'm like, man, I would have this conversation anywhere but here. Uh, like, yeah. So it's just at the food court in the mall, and he's like, "All right, I'm gonna say it just this one time, so you know what it is, and you know to never say it, because it's a very bad word, and it's hurtful to certain people." And he probably went in more detail than that. I don't know, but like just like very clear, like I'm saying it so that you never say it. Don't say it. And then I didn't hear him say it, but then one of his artists is like, "Oh, I heard whoever say that." He's like, "Yeah, because he's racist."
Oh, that's really funny.
So
That's really
yeah,
funny.
he did. I thought he did a great job, but it's not really my opinion that matters most on the subject. So
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. I saw this. Have you seen the spelling bee clip or the meme?
Derek comedy.
Not that one. There. I've seen that one. There's another one where
Oh,
the
Negus.
no, he says
Not that one.
spell inward,
That's good.
and then the kid starts spelling the N word.
That's funny. I haven't seen that one. Have you seen the Negus one?
Yeah, yeah, that
Oh
one's good
man,
too.
that one. That's quality. Uh that poor kid gonna get canceled before he has facial hair.
Same. Uh, Technically, it would be after I have facial hair because
It's true.
yeah, I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's three movies based on true stories. They're three of my favorite uh, in their own way. Not that I enjoyed what happened in the true story necessarily, but three of the most interesting true stories behind movies that I found. I know there's more that are also very interesting, and I know there's more that we could talk about. But actually, what happened is I don't even remember where I saw it, but I saw somebody posted on some social media platform about Fray Tormenta, and I was like, that sounds like Nacho Libre. And I looked it up, and I was like, oh, it is Nacho Libre. Uh, and so I decided I was gonna do this. I was holding on to it for a week or two. I was like, well, now's the time.
Gotta do it.
Yeah.
No, that yeah, this is fun. This is a good subject. Yeah, so thanks for listening. This is probably gonna be a shorter one, so that's good. And you've made it this far. That's even better. Yeah, you alone have made it this far. So we appreciate it. But yeah, huge shout out to everyone for listening and for sticking with us through pretty much like 5 years now. Have we hit a year yet? No, we're not even close.
October.
Yeah, we're so close.
We're so close.
Huge shout out to Alec Welch for getting married
Mm-hmm.
and letting Gage and I be in your wedding and then get back together for the show. Who else do I have awkward thank yous for? Thanks to you, Gage. Um, did not see your mom today. It'll be a little while before I see your mom, probably. Probably at your wedding would be my guess, unless we make a trip at some point, which is not unfeasible. Um,
Arguably would
but
happen a lot sooner than my wedding.
that's true. That's true. No, but yeah, looking forward to hanging out with you on Thursday through Monday ish.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be fun. Thank you to, again, listeners. Thanks, guys. We really appreciate you. All of you, except for one. And we'll let you guys try to figure out who that is.
I know who that
Um,
is.
I don't know who that is.
No, I'm kidding.
Hey, the cats. Up yours. Yeah. Hey, Adam. Adam Ward. Thank you. Jared Scrowther, thank you for the intro and outro music, respectively. Is there anyone I'm forgetting?
Not that I can think of right now.
I'd
I'm
like
gonna.
to thank the Academy. Sorry.
Yeah. I do have two responses that I'm gonna read.
Oh,
Uh,
love that.
on our episode questions you should ask on a first date, which is really just DJ and I going through questions, first date questions. A really fun episode. If you have not listened to that one, go check it out. Um, I asked the question, what is your go-to first date question? And our good friend Hayden Van Dorian, who has also been on the podcast, said, do you listen to everything but the cats? Which is the
Love that.
only important first date question. Uh,
Did Did you play FIFA with him
I
like two
did.
days ago?
I did.
Sweet.
It's cross-platform. The newest one is
That's awesome.
cool enough. Uh,
GAFC 24.
yep.
I wonder how long people will still call it FIFA.
Yeah, probably forever.
Good.
It was free like a month or two ago. Also, one of the games that's free right now is NHL 24. So I got that because I'm
PlayStation Plus. Sorry.
yes, very interested in that. Um, and then on the episode with Hayden Van Dorian, the trolley problem, good food, and living in China with Hayden Van Dorian commented in response to the question, "What do you want to hear about? Let's go."
Great.
No, it really was a joy having him on, uh,
Yeah.
and it's a joy having anybody on that is on. If you are a friend of the podcast and you would like to be on for an episode, please go ahead and contact us at nocatspod@gmail.com or reach out to us on our social media platforms. If you're listening on YouTube, please leave a like and a comment. It helps out the most. Subscribe if you haven't. And if you are listening on the podcast platforms, please go ahead and just continue to share and give your involvement however it sees fit, whether that be through ratings, reviews, or whatever there may be available. Even if you don't, though, we appreciate you and stay lovely, dear listener.
Go thank yourself, please.